Well, think of it as what we've been doing in aviation for the last 20 years. It's systems integration, simulation, analytics. Now we're applying that, what's kind of in our core DNA, and applying it to the healthcare industry. So instead of just a standalone simulation, it has the ability to integrate with real hardware, real devices, being able to stim from the outside. So you can have a virtual patient, you can create conditions for the patient that would trigger smart alarms, for instance, on the outside world. You can have real hardware hooked up to an actual patient and trigger events in the simulator. The idea being going from virtual to real should be seamless. Think of it as a flight simulator for an ICU or for an ER or for an OR. You should be able to test out every contingency, every configuration, every outcome prior to you going into that actual environment. What will this device be like? What will this condition be like? Is this person trained properly? Is this version of the software proper? Is this version of the hardware proper? Understanding all the things that could happen before you get in there. So everything you do in aviation from a flight simulation standpoint with real hardware and real software and real simulation, you should be able to apply it to the clinical environment. And we've gotten a lot of interest in this particular project for that area.
So, I mean, I look at this screen and I see you've got several nurses here, a doctor, you've got, it looks like 2, 3 different beds that are occupied. You know, what do you take, how do you build something like that for an individual hospital? And then how do you trigger different things that make you learn from that scenario?
Once you have the infrastructure built, the core infrastructure, it's very easy to tailor to any sort of hospital. It's moving a wall, it's moving some piece of hardware from one part of the room to the other. Once the core is built, then you can tailor it for whatever situation that you have. An ER, an OR, an ICU. You can then configure it so you have lots of people moving around. It's a very chaotic environment. You can configure it so the simulation, for instance, is geared towards a potential problem that they've had, some other time. You're trying to address that. It can be used to train people who are brand new to the environment, or to be able to see, here's where errors have occurred in the past, what can we do to fix those? So there's lots of different ways you can try and use that, but it focuses on the core of systems integration, analytics, and simulation, integrating those all together and applying them to the healthcare space. We're not going to be going into a clinical environment and telling them how to run their hospital or how to practice healthcare. We're going to build the tools that allow them to determine where their pain points are and how to address them. So think of it as we're not writing any sort of novel, we're building the word processor that they're then able to use to write the best-selling novel. So they can determine how many nurses they want in there, how many doctors, what equipment. The infrastructure is there that they can do all that work. Simulations that can then try out different cases. What's it like on a Thursday night in the ER? You can turn up the number of patients coming in. What conditions do they have? So the subject matter expert has the ability to tailor the simulation for their particular needs. If you have someone in charge of an ER, they may want to know how many nurses they need on duty for this particular type of day, type of event. Someone else may be curious about what type of equipment you have to have in there. Think of it as a tailorable suite of tools that you can then use for whatever clinical environment that you want to try out. Johns Hopkins and Lockheed Martin have a collaboration now to look at what the next generation of ICU is going to look like. Right now an ICU has anywhere between 50 and 150 pieces of equipment that don't generally speak to each other. That's a big issue. We're looking at what the next generation is going to look like, what interoperability is going to be, what new processes we can put in place to eliminate errors, to reduce costs, and to improve the overall outcomes for the patient. So that's the project right now we're working on very closely with Johns Hopkins Medical. One of the things that we like about this is we want to take the best of all the other products out there and integrate them in here. Lockheed is not trying to be the one-stop shop for everything. We want to be the integrator, the systems integrator. And the job is to be able to take whatever EMR you've chosen, whatever pulse oximeter, whatever alarm management system, and integrate it into the system and be able to show you how it works. So give you the ability to say, what if? And look at what could happen in this environment. And that's really what the heart of this is. Think of it as a flight simulator for a hospital where you can try every combination of what you want before you really have to touch an actual patient.